Okay, the last few days, my brain has just been going around and around and around on what do we do about establishment Democrats. And I've gotten a lot of flack from kind of blue MAGA DNC folks who are really pissed off that I would dare criticize the Democratic Party, the DNC, the establishment. I've gotten a number of comments that are like, Angela, you talk about building a broad-based coalition, that we need a solidarity movement where we can all agree on one thing. Our goal is to stop fascism and we can set all our other differences aside, right? We need a diversity of people that are going to have a wide range of beliefs. We're not going to see eye to eye on a lot of issues, but we can come together, unify, and hold the line together on this one issue. So how dare you criticize the Democrats? This is not a time for criticism. This is a time for unity. And I've really been mulling that over the last couple of days. Like, is it damaging to criticize establishment Democrats at this point in history? Am I working against my stated goals because I'm angry that, corporate establishment Democrats are not doing enough, that the DNC is not doing enough? Is this a time to just put up with insufficient allyship and insufficient leadership and just take whatever crumbs we can get? Am I working against my own stated goals by making multiple videos and multiple blue sky posts where I'm critical of the DNC and critical of Democrats who do things like continue to vote for Trump's nominees, continue to vote for Trump's bills, go down in history? Okay, for folks who said that there's a ghost in my house, it's just the poodle. It's just the poodle. There's no doorknob on this door. He's got a lot of anxiety and he just needs to come and check that I'm actually still in the house and I have not disappeared. Anyway, where was I? We are watching various members of Congress go down in history, having their names recorded. They're in the record books as voting in favor of things that Trump wants, as giving bipartisan support to things that this god-awful fascist regime is wanting to implement. And I've been pissed off about it. I've been really, really mad and really frustrated about it. But I've been sitting with those folks' criticisms who are saying, Angela, now is the time to just zip it and tolerate what they're doing and accept any measure of help, any measure of help that you can get. But then this morning, I went to Pramila Jayapal's second installment of her resistance lab. And her perspective is very much, you have to be strategic, you have to organize, very like a woman after my own heart. In order to build an effective resistance, it doesn't just magically come together, right? I've said that for all the folks who are saying we need a general strike right now. Well, we haven't laid the groundwork. We haven't built the scaffolding and the support network behind it. Right, like Rosa Parks didn't decide, I'm going to get on this bus and be an activist today. No, that was strategic planning with a team behind her and an intentional act. It was not something that happened on a whim or spontaneously. And so Congresswoman Jayapal has these resistance labs to educate people, to get people ready, and to teach people effective strategies for dismantling authoritarianism. And one of the things that was talked about in today's lab was these pillars of support for an authoritarian regime. And I want to talk about the pillars of support extensively in a future video, probably later today, because it's a concept that I think we don't talk about enough, especially when people are saying impeach Trump or stop Trump. The way that you really dismantle a dictator, the way you strip him of his power, is that you pull out all of the people and institutions that are propping him up. A dictator doesn't wield control all by himself. He is empowered by other sycophants, other supports that are willing to do his will. And if you can get those institutions and people that are propping him up to withdraw their support, to turn away from him, he will crumble. He will lose his power. And this is why I have been over and over and over again saying that we have got to dog on Republicans in Congress because they are one of those pillars of support. Congress should be the checks and balances, but they're not. They're being a pillar of support for a fascist dictator. And one of the big reasons that Trump is empowered to do all of the horrible shit that he's doing now is because Congress is letting him get away with it. So how can we chip away one at a time a sufficient quantity of Republican members of the House and the Senate? And there are a number of them that are kind of waffling. And so how can we yank them out? Because you're not going to magically get impeachment just by yelling that Donald Trump deserves to be impeached. The people who are upholding and supporting him, they have to be flipped. They have to be incentivized to withdraw their support. And that incentive can come in the form of a carrot or a stick. So as the Congresswoman's webinar was going on, I was thinking about the pillars of support, the ones you traditionally think of: the church, the media, universities, the courts, the House and the Senate, corporations, and the military. And it's worth noting that the military, the church, corporations, media, universities, the House and the Senate, those are all populated by people, right? There are people within those systems that are upholding Trump. that entities, institutions are made up of people, and it is the obedience of the people within those institutions that allows oppressive men to keep their power. Sometimes that obedience comes in the form of actively instituting the will of the dictator. But sometimes it's just, I don't want to buck the system. I don't want to stand in the way of what he's doing. I will give tacit approval. I will be a do-nothing. I'm not actively implementing his plan, but I'm also doing nothing to obstruct it. I'm just clearing a path and saying, come right on through. And as I was thinking about these pillars of support, I was like, well, that's establishment Democrats. That's kind of what the DNC, that's definitely what Chuck Schumer and a number of Democrats in the House and the Senate are doing. They are being a pillar of support. A pillar of support for Donald Trump. They're not actually a member of the resistance at all. They're not actually an opposition to fascism at all. They are empowering him. They are propping him up and enabling him to forward his fascist agenda. So one of the things that was talked about in the Congresswoman's webinar today was, how do we attack the pillars of support? How do we pressure and force them into non-cooperation? Even if they don't really want to stop cooperating, how do we get them to do what we want? How do we get them to be more afraid of us than they are of Donald Trump so that they stop supporting him? In order to undermine a pillar that is upholding the Trump regime, we have to reach the people who are inside that pillar. And we have to force them into non-cooperation. We have to force them into no longer either standing aside and freely letting Trump do what he wants, or actually facilitating what he wants. And this is what that cohort of establishment corporate Democrats are continuing to do. They are continuing to be a pillar of support to Donald Trump because they are unwilling to engage in non-cooperation. And how do I know that? Well, we just saw 16 Democratic senators vote yes to confirm Trump's election denier nominee to be ambassador for China, while Trump is openly flouting the Supreme Court. While we are in a constitutional crisis where American citizens are being exiled from this country, establishment Democrats are still voting yes for things that Trump wants. We're still watching members of the House, granted just 4 of them, recently vote for the biggest voter suppression bill we have seen in ages, the SAVE Act. They are actively being a pillar of support for the Trump regime. And how do we get them to stop doing that? Public pressure. Open, vigorous critique. We need to make Democratic electeds who are not being in opposition to fascism, who are not part of the resistance, we need to make sure that they fear their voters more than they fear Donald Trump. We need to pressure them into engaging in non-compliance instead of active support for fascism or tacit support. So that is sort of the position that I've landed on, which is that we should be vigorously critiquing our Democratic electeds who are not doing right by us, the American people, not doing right by the Constitution, and are functionally upholding the Trump regime. And I also want to remind folks, once again, our electeds in Congress, the Democrats, they work for us. This is a country of, by, and for the people. Our elected officials, they are our public servants. The power lies with the people. So we have every right to criticize them when they are not doing the job. Yes, we need a broad-based coalition with solidarity of people who may have very different political ideas, be all over the political spectrum, but we are unified around one thing, and that is that we do not want a king in the United States. We are a democracy, and we do not want the dictatorship of Donald Trump. So that is the thing that we come together and we unify around, right? That's where we have common ground, and we don't need to argue about those other issues right now. We need to get to a place where we have a safe, stable democracy so that we can have these other debates. But establishment Democrats, they're not unifying with us around that one common goal. They are not enacting that value. They're not opposed to fascism, or at least they're not acting like it. They're not actually part of the resistance. They aren't having solidarity with us around that one issue. Do you understand the difference? In this moment in time, I will stand next to Adam Kinzinger and hold the line against fascism because he and I are both willing to fight for our democracy. But I can't stand arm in arm with somebody who's laying down or somebody that is actively supporting what Trump is doing because it meets their political goals. It's expedient for them somehow, or because they lack the courage and the conviction to do what's right. So I will criticize those establishment Democrats all day long until they start to engage in non-cooperation, until they cease to be a pillar of support. until they stand up and fight with the rest of the Democrats, with the progressive Democrats, and the rest of the resistance.